Have you ever found yourself just standing in your kitchen, maybe, holding a cup of coffee or whatever, and you just look down and see it?
A single ant.
Yeah, exactly. Just this single solitary ant kind of absentmindedly crawling across the floor.
Right.
And in that brief second, you might feel this sudden, strange connection to it. Like a momentary recognition of another living thing just sharing your space.
Or, let's be honest, you might just feel super annoyed.
Right, yeah. You grab a paper towel and just wipe it away without a second thought.
Which is what most of us do, yeah.
Totally. But today, we're asking you to just pause.
Yeah.
We're doing a deep dive into this deeply reflective essay by Salahuddin Sikander called Reflections on a Tiny Ant.
It's a really incredible piece of writing.
It is. And the essay basically argues that you and that tiny ant are fundamentally exactly the same.
Which is a very uncomfortable truth to swallow.
Oh, massively uncomfortable.
Right.
But the premise is that realizing this truth might actually be the key to freeing yourself from, the total exhaustion of the human ego.
Yeah, because it forces a completely radical shift in perspective. Sikander takes this totally mundane interaction, the kind of thing we do automatically every single day, and he uses it as a mirror.
A pretty harsh mirror, too.
Oh, a very harsh mirror. We're so used to walking around viewing ourselves as, the undisputed rulers of the earth, right? The grand architects of reality.
Right.
But by forcing us to look at the geometry of scale and the actual mechanics of power, this text just strips all of that away.
It really does. It forces us to confront just how fragile our hold on existence actually is.
Exactly. And strangely, it shows how finding out we aren't the center of the universe is, it's actually the best news we could possibly get.
Yeah. So right from the start, the essay frames our reality as this quiet theater of existence.
That's the phrase he uses, yeah.
Right. And we're all acting out our parts, completely absorbed in our own drama, and we're mostly just ignoring the extras on the stage.
Like the ant.
Exactly. The ant just makes its humble entrance into this theater as a mere speck of animated dust. I love that phrasing. It's like a living punctuation mark in the sprawling sentence of creation.
It's a beautiful, very poetic image.
But then, once we establish that poetry, the reality of the situation hits.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality of how humans actually interact with these creatures on a daily basis is just based on a brutal, staggering discrepancy in power.
The mathematics of power here are just undeniable. We have this striking contrast between the ant's physical littleness, right, and human might.
Yeah.
Sikander describes man as a colossus standing upon the earth. But this isn't just about physical height or weight.
Right. It's not just that we're bigger.
No, it's about our capacity to manipulate the physical world. We wield powers that can literally reshape entire landscapes.
We can alter the chemical composition of the atmosphere.
Exactly. We split atoms. We command forces that would have utterly terrified our ancient ancestors.
Yeah, we basically operate as planetary architects.
And meanwhile, the ant is just this fragile pulse. It's a whisper of life that is so easily extinguished that we don't even register its passing.
We really don't. And the phrase that really captures that for me is how we drown them in the casual flood of our daily ablutions.
Oh, that line is devastating.
Right. Just think about what that actually means.
Yeah.
The act of washing our hands or, rinsing off the driveway with a hose.
Or flushing a drain.
Yeah. These are totally routine, completely thoughtless actions for us. But for the ant, they are literal apocalyptic events.
We obliterate entire colonies with a single sweep of indifference.
Just totally by accident. And because of this, the author concludes that to the ant, man isn't a fellow creature. We are, and this is a quote, a capricious god of destruction.
Capricious being the operative word there.
Yeah, let's unpack that, because what does it actually mean to be a capricious god to another living thing?
Well, it means our destruction of them isn't born of malice. We don't actively hate the ant.
Right, not mad at the ant in the driveway.
Exactly. And it isn't born of necessity either, or some grand orchestrated plan for the universe. It is entirely arbitrary.
It's just random.
We are immensely powerful, and we are utterly unaccountable. There are no trials for stepping on an ant.
There's no moral weight to it.
None. We deal out death and destruction purely by accident of scale, kind of like weather. To an ant, a human foot coming down is literally indistinguishable from a meteor strike.
Wow, yeah. But, okay, doesn't that raise a question about how power affects our psychology?
How do you mean?
Well, I keep thinking about a video game. Say you're playing a massive open world game and you turn God mode on.
Okay, right.
Suddenly you have infinite health, infinite power, nothing can hurt you, and there are basically zero rules. what happens to the player?
You usually just stop caring.
Exactly. You stop caring.
Yeah.
When the consequences disappear, empathy usually follows suit right behind it. You just walk through the level, destroying everything because nothing has any stakes.
That's a really interesting point.
So, is our lack of empathy for the ant an actual moral failure? Or is it just the natural psychological result of playing reality in God mode?
Well, the God mode concept actually explains the mechanism of our indifference perfectly. When there is no feedback loop of consequence, the human brain literally stops processing the action as meaningful.
So it's just a biological glitch, almost.
Kind of. Psychologically speaking, empathy requires a perceived shared vulnerability. If you cannot be hurt by the thing you are interacting with, your brain categorizes it as an object, not a subject.
Wow, an object, not a subject.
Yeah. Sikander points out that because we suffer absolutely zero consequences for ending an ant's life, we have allowed ourselves to forget what life actually is.
We equate physical vulnerability with insignificance.
Exactly. We assume that because the package is small and powerless, the contents of the package just don't matter.
We equate physical vulnerability with insignificance. That's heavy. And if we accept that, it kind of forces us to look for what actually connects us.
Because there has to be a baseline.
Right. If we are the colossus,
Yeah.
and the ant is the fragile pulse, what's the common denominator? The essay argues that despite this massive chasm of power, there is an undeniable, invisible thread tying us together.
Yeah, and this is where the essay transitions from the physical hierarchy of the world to the biological reality of it.
Okay, let's dig into that.
So, when you strip away all of man's philosophy, all our art, our ambition,
All the stuff we're so proud of.
right, all the complex outputs of human consciousness that the ant knows absolutely nothing about, when you strip that away, you are left with the underlying mechanism.
Which is?
That both the human and the ant are animated by the exact same mysterious electric current of life.
Yes. It's like the power strip in my office.
Okay, a power strip.
Yeah, so I have all these different appliances plugged into the same wall outlet. On one side, I have this hyper-complex, massively powerful computer rendering video and calculating millions of processes a second.
Right.
But on the exact same power strip, plugged in right next to it, I have a tiny, cheap $1 LED nightlight that just glows a dim orange.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
They look entirely different, right?
Yeah.
And they perform vastly different functions. But the fundamental mechanism making them work is identical.
They both require electricity.
Exactly. They both require the exact same 120 volts of alternating current. It's identical electricity. And without that electricity flowing through the copper wires, both the supercomputer and the tiny light bulb are just inert plastic and metal.
They are equally dead.
Exactly.
That electrical analogy really hits the core of the biological argument here. We carry this deep-seated illusion that our complex outputs, the symphonies, the satellites, the poetry, we think, that somehow makes the fundamental spark of life inside of us superior, or just different in kind.
It's like we have premium electricity.
Yes, premium electricity, exactly. But we don't. At the cellular level, the biological imperatives are exactly the same. We are both driven by the primal dictates of self-preservation and perpetuation.
We metabolize energy.
We react to stimuli. We seek to avoid death. The ant and the philosopher share this exact same biological baseline. And the text really hones in on the specific moment that this connection becomes visible.
Which is the moment that current gets switched off.
The moment of death, yes.
The text says that when that invisible current ceases, the ant becomes still. It becomes a tiny corpse.
Yeah.
And seeing this tiny corpse stirs in us a sudden pang of recognition.
You have to ask, why does seeing a dead insect, something we literally kill routinely, why does that have the capacity to trigger that reaction?
Right, because normally we don't care.
Exactly. The text explains it by saying, quote, "Here lies a life, complete in its own small universe, now returned to the silence from which it briefly emerged."
Complete in its own small universe. That's powerful.
The key mechanism there is that concept of a complete universe. We often project our own desires onto animals, assuming they are somehow lesser just because they don't have human capabilities.
Like, oh, the poor ant can't do math.
Right. But the ant did not feel incomplete because it couldn't write a novel or build a suspension bridge. It had a full, absolute experience of existence according to its own biological parameters.
It did exactly what it was meant to do.
Exactly. So when it dies, an entire self-contained universe ends.
And that pang of recognition we feel, that's just our own subconscious realizing that the exact same silence is waiting for us, isn't it?
That's it. We look at the tiny corpse and we recognize the fragility of the vessel. We recognize that the electric current has been switched off for the ant, and our brain immediately makes the leap that our switch is wired to the exact same breaker box.
The exact same breaker box, yeah.
It is the realization of essence over intellect. We spend our entire lives caught up in our intellect, our achievements, our grand plans for the future.
We build our whole identities around what we do.
We do, but fundamentally, we are just biological vessels temporarily holding on to this electric current. Now, the author notes this pang of recognition only happens if we are attentive.
And that's the catch, isn't it?
That's a huge catch, because most of the time, we aren't attentive.
No. We're too busy enjoying God mode. We're too busy being the Colossus.
Exactly. We're distracted by our own power.
Right. Which honestly brings up a pretty terrifying question.
What's that?
Well, if we are the unaccountable gods of the ant, just blindly dealing out destruction, who is playing God with us?
Ah, yes.
The essay suddenly grabs the camera here and just spins it around to look at the human colossus from above.
And this is where the illusion of our own mastery gets brutally dismantled.
Brutally.
We rely on our powerful intellects to grant us this illusion of control over our environment. We look at our cities and our highways, and we genuinely feel like we have conquered the earth.
We feel invincible.
But Sikander points out that on a vaster scale, we are completely dwarfed by the raw, indifferent majesty of nature.
The specific forces he brings up are entirely elemental, too. He says nature cares absolutely nothing for our inventions, or our civilizations, or our self-proclaimed importance.
None of it.
He points to hurricanes, howling like cosmic furies. He talks about earthquakes that crack the very bones of the earth, famines that wither entire nations, and diseases that spread like silent shadows across continents.
It's a terrifying list.
It is. And in the face of this raw elemental power, a human being, for all of our skyscrapers and satellites and symphonies, we stand as helpless as the ant beneath the boot.
Look at the structural juxtaposition he uses there, though. It's really clever.
How so?
He pits human creations directly against elemental realities to prove a point about vulnerability. So the skyscraper represents our architectural and engineering dominance, right? But it's pitted against the earthquake that just cracks the tectonic plates. The satellite represents our technological and perceptive dominance, our ability to see everything from space.
Yeah, we have eyes everywhere.
But that's pitted against the hurricane, this cosmic fury that simply ignores the satellite's warnings and destroys the coast anyway.
Oh, well, I see what you mean.
And then the symphony, our highest cultural and emotional achievement, that's pitted against the silent shadows of disease. He is systematically proving that absolutely none of the things we build to protect ourselves can negotiate with nature.
Nature doesn't care about our art.
Exactly. Nature's boot is just as capricious and just as absolute as the human shoe coming down on the ant.
Wait, let me push back on this for a second.
Okay, go ahead.
Are we really that helpless? I mean, Sikander acts like a hurricane is this unstoppable cosmic fury that just wipes us out. But we literally have those satellites that track them down to the minute.
We do track them, yeah.
We know exactly when they're going to hit, and we evacuate. We invent vaccines, and we cure diseases with modern medicine. We build skyscrapers in Tokyo and San Francisco that are specifically engineered to sway and survive massive earthquakes.
True.
So hasn't human engineering essentially bought us out of this vulnerability? Are we really still the ant under the boot if we can predict where the boot is going to fall and build a titanium shield over ourselves?
Well, it's completely natural to want to defend human achievement here.
Because I want to feel safe.
Exactly. We desperately want to believe that our armor works. That is the exact psychological comfort that Sikander is targeting. Psychologists refer to this as our locus of control.
Locus of control. Okay, what's that?
We have an intense psychological need for an internal locus of control, the belief that we dictate our own outcomes. We need to feel like we're driving the car.
Right, that makes sense.
So yes, we can predict the hurricane, but can we stop the barometric pressure from dropping?
No.
No. We evacuate, which is essentially just running away from the boot.
Wow, okay. Fair point.
We can engineer a building to sway, sure. But if the tectonic plate shifts a 9.5 instead of an 8.0, the city still falls. We cure diseases, but new silent shadows emerge every decade.
So the technology is really just padding then?
Exactly. The technology is a buffer. It allows us to maintain the illusion of mastery on a daily basis, but Sikander's focusing on ultimate vulnerability.
The bedrock reality of it.
Yeah. The cognitive dissonance we feel when a massive natural disaster strikes, that is the sudden, violent shattering of that locus of control.
Because suddenly we realize we aren't in charge.
It is the terrifying realization that we are not the masters of the house. We are just tenants. And nature is a landlord who can evict us at any moment, without any warning, and without any mechanism for appeal.
Nature doesn't take us to court.
No. Mortality maintains a 100% success rate, no matter how many satellites we put in orbit.
A 100% success rate. Man, that is bleak, but you can't argue with it.
You really can't.
And when that illusion of control is shattered, it forces this massive shift in how we view our own importance, right? We realize we are physically vulnerable, which naturally leads to a philosophical shift. We have to confront the geometry of perspective.
Right. And the text asks us to imagine the Earth as this enormous breathing canvas. Both the ant and the human are painting their fleeting stories on this exact same canvas.
But we view our painting very differently.
Very differently. The core of the issue is how our localized perspective creates a profoundly false sense of centrality.
Yeah. Think about the ant tracing its delicate trails across the kitchen linoleum or, through the dirt on a garden path.
Yeah, okay.
In its own instinctive, chemical-driven way, it believes its world is the center of all things. That crumb of bread it found, that is the most critical resource in the universe.
To the ant, it absolutely is.
Right. And that crack in the pavement it has to cross, that's the Grand Canyon. Its reality is entirely bounded by its immediate sensory input.
And then Sikander points the mirror back at us.
He does. Humans chart our courses across continents and oceans. We fly in jets, we trade on global markets, and we are completely, unshakably convinced that our human dramas, our political elections, our wars, our loves, our stock market crashes, we think all of that constitutes the grand, definitive narrative of existence.
And that is the ultimate trap of the human ego.
Because it's not the grand narrative at all.
Not even close. We assume our scale is the definitive scale of reality. But the essay demands that we lift our gaze. It introduces these macro perspectives, the vantage point of a mountain, the distant orbit of the moon, and the unimaginable stretching reaches of cosmic time.
Right, time itself becomes a scale.
Exactly. And when you apply those perspectives, the mechanism of scale does its work. From the moon, our bustling cities and our teeming metropolises are structurally and functionally indistinguishable from a frantic anthill.
This actually maps perfectly onto a well-documented psychological phenomenon.
Oh, the overview effect.
Yes, the overview effect.
Yeah.
When astronauts go up into space and look back at the Earth, they almost universally report this massive cognitive shift.
It completely changes them.
It does. Edgar Mitchell, who walked on the moon during Apollo 14, he famously said that when you look at Earth from space, you develop an instant global consciousness.
I love his quote on this.
It's so good. He said you want to grab politicians by the scruff of the neck and drag them 250,000 miles out to say, look at that, you son of a bitch.
It's perfect.
Because from that distance, all the borders, all the wars, all the intense human dramas, they just vanish into this fragile little blue marble. The physical distance naturally forces a philosophical detachment.
And the overview effect is the exact scientific manifestation of Sikander's philosophical point. The essay uses this haunting imagery to convey that detachment.
Like what?
Well, he talks about mountains that watch generations of humans climb their slopes, only to vanish like morning mist.
Morning mist.
Wow. And oceans that swallow our ships, our armadas, and our sorrows with equal blank indifference. Stars that have been burning for billions of years, paying absolutely no heed to our fleeting triumphs or tragedies.
Right.
From a billion light years away, the rise and fall of the entire Roman Empire didn't even register as a blink.
It's less than a blink, but
yeah.
Okay, if we follow that logic all the way down, we hit a pretty dangerous wall, don't we?
The wall of meaninglessness.
Yeah. If the stars don't care about our fleeting triumphs, doesn't that inherently make our triumphs worthless?
Well,
because if nothing matters to the mountain, why should it matter to me? If we're literally just ants on a spinning rock, that feels like a fast track to total existential dread and nihilism.
It's the precipice of nihilism, yes. When you suddenly confront the cosmic scale, the immediate reaction is almost always despair.
It's terrifying.
Because if my life is a blink, it must be meaningless, right?
That's the feeling, yeah.
But the mechanism Sikander uses to guide us away from that despair is crucial. He isn't arguing that our triumphs are worthless.
He's not.
No. He is arguing that they don't matter to the stars. They matter to us. The fundamental mistake the human ego makes is demanding that the universe validate our experiences. We want the cosmos to give us a standing ovation.
But the cosmos doesn't have hands to clap with.
Precisely. The detachment of the mountain doesn't erase the beauty or the reality of the morning mist. It merely frames it. It reveals its fleeting nature.
Okay, that makes sense.
To accept that humanity is not the grand central narrative of the universe doesn't mean we have no narrative. It just means our narrative is local. It is intimate.
Like a campfire.
Exactly like a campfire. A campfire is profoundly warm and meaningful to the people sitting around it, even if the rest of outer space is freezing cold. The fact that the stars are indifferent doesn't make the campfire any less warm.
It just means we need to stop yelling at the stars to notice our fire.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
That is an incredibly grounding way to look at it. And Sikander, almost as if he anticipates how dizzying this cosmic scale can be, he actually grounds the entire philosophy in a very specific real-world anecdote.
Right, he pulls us back down to Earth.
He pulls us down from the stars and places us on an overhead bridge in Peshawar.
The Peshawar Bridge Epiphany. This is where this abstract geometry of perspective becomes a lived, visceral human reality.
So he describes standing on this elevated bridge looking down at the crowded bazaar below.
Have you ever been to a market like that?
Oh yeah, if you've ever been to a bustling market or a packed city center, you know the exact sensory overload of that environment. Down on the ground, in the bazaar, it's total chaos.
It's overwhelming.
There's heat, there's the smell of spices and exhaust, there's the deafening noise of 1,000 simultaneous conversations.
Right.
The people down there are hurrying. They are aggressively bargaining for goods. They are laughing. They are arguing over right-of-way. The text notes that every single one of them is immersed in the urgent business of their day.
It is an environment of intense, localized, highly prioritized human drama.
Every person down there is the main character of their own universe.
But Sikander isn't down in the bazaar. He is removed from it. He is elevated 50 feet in the air.
Which changes everything.
It does. From that height, the actual mechanics of perception change. The people below are diminished by distance. He can no longer hear the individual argument over the price of fabric.
You can't see the facial expressions of the people laughing.
Exactly. And what does he see instead? He sees fluid dynamics. He sees rhythmic streams of movement. From the bridge, humanity loses its individual identity and becomes a colony.
A literal anthill.
They appear purposeful, collective, but completely blind to the larger architectural and social forces that frame their existence and dictate their movements.
It's an experience we can all relate to in modern life, honestly.
Oh, totally.
Think about being in an airplane just after takeoff, banking over a major city. You look down at the highway traffic.
All those tiny cars.
Right. Or maybe you're at the top of an observation deck in a skyscraper, looking down at the tiny dots of commuters swarming the sidewalks at 5 p.m.
It's mesmerizing.
It is. And every single one of those little moving dots is a human being with a brain as complex as your own. They have their own deep-seated fears, their own intense loves, their own completely urgent business.
Yes.
Someone down there is rushing to the hospital for the birth of a child. Someone else is going to a job interview that will change their life.
But you don't see any of that.
You don't. From 30,000 feet or from the 100th floor, you don't perceive any of that profound individual reality. You just see the flow. You see the anthill.
Because distance filters out the micro and reveals the macro.
Right.
And Sikander explicitly expands this concept beyond just the everyday commute. He brings in the imagery of massive public demonstrations where human waves surge like living rivers through city streets.
Oh, wow.
He points to football stadiums swollen with thousands of cheering souls. In these moments of mass gathering, the individual ego is essentially subsumed by the collective movement.
We stop being me and start being us.
Exactly. The wave surging in a protest, the synchronized roar of a stadium, these are primal collective behaviors. They structurally and behaviorally mirror the highly social collective intelligence of an ant colony.
And he writes that in these moments, with a leap of imagination bordering on revelation, we glimpse our true scale.
Yes.
We realize we are essentially, quote, giant ants endowed with powerful brains, yet still bound by the same fragile thread of life that connects us to the smallest creature.
Giant ants endowed with powerful brains.
It's such a jarring, funny, but deeply humbling classification.
It really is.
And it brings us to the ultimate synthesis of this deep dive. The author has spent the entire essay systematically dismantling our sense of supremacy.
He has thoroughly dismantled it.
He has exposed our absolute physical vulnerability to nature, and he has reduced our complex, grand civilizations to the frantic, predictable movements of a colony.
Right.
We talked earlier about the threat of nihilism, but here's where Sikander provides the cure. He argues that internalizing this vast, diminishing perspective isn't depressing at all.
It's the opposite.
Yes, it is profoundly liberating.
This is the critical philosophical payoff of the whole piece. He states unequivocally that seeing ourselves on this diminished scale does not diminish our actual worth.
It doesn't make us worthless.
No. Instead, it acts as a mechanism of release. It liberates us from what he calls the heavy chains of arrogance and parochialism.
Okay, let's really look at that word. Parochialism.
Let's do it.
It basically means having a narrow, restricted, highly localized viewpoint. It's the psychological state of believing that your town, your country, your specific ideology, or even just your personal problems are the absolute center of the universe.
And everything outside of that tight little circle is lesser or wrong or irrelevant.
Exactly. And historically, parochialism is the root cause of almost all unnecessary human conflict.
And questionable.
We fight brutal wars over invisible, arbitrary lines drawn on the dirt. People are marginalized and destroyed simply because they fall outside a localized, temporary norm.
But the ant perspective acts as a universal solvent for that parochialism.
It dissolves those borders.
Completely. From the moon, you literally cannot see national borders. From the perspective of cosmic time, an empire's 1,000-year reign is less than a millisecond.
And the liberation comes from putting down the weight of those chains.
Because the chains of arrogance are incredibly exhausting to carry.
They really are.
Think about it. It takes a massive, continuous expenditure of psychic energy to constantly maintain the belief that you, or your group, are the unchallenged masters of creation.
You always have to be defending it.
Yes, it requires constant defense against anything that threatens that worldview. Sikander suggests that when we truly internalize the vastness of time and space, when we deeply, genuinely contemplate the endless epochs of history that existed before we were born, and the infinite stretching silence that will continue long after our death, a profound psychological transformation occurs.
We finally let go.
We do. He writes that under the weight of that cosmic reality, humility blooms naturally, like a quiet flower in the desert of ego.
The desert of ego. That is such a vivid phrase.
It is.
And if you want to understand exactly what the desert of ego feels like in the modern world, just think about spending an hour arguing with strangers on Twitter or doom-scrolling social media.
Oh, that is the perfect example.
Right. The modern ego is a harsh, barren desert. It demands constant maintenance. It demands constant hydration in the form of validation and attention.
Likes, retweets, comments.
Exactly. And yet, it yields absolutely no true peace. The ego demands that we be the center of the universe. It demands that our personal slights be punished, that our individual achievements be glorified, and that our existence somehow be permanent.
Which is impossible.
It is impossible.
Yeah.
And as you said, trying to force reality to meet those demands is an exhausting, heavy burden. Shedding that self-importance, actually accepting that we are just a tiny, temporary part of a massive, indifferent, but deeply beautiful cosmic tapestry is an absolute physical relief.
It is the relief of finally surrendering in an unwinnable war against reality.
You stop trying to fight the mountain.
No, stop fighting the mountain.
Yeah.
The text presents us with this beautiful, stabilizing paradox. We are both powerful and powerless.
Both at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
We possess the staggering intellect required to split the atom and compose symphonies, yet we remain utterly powerless to stop the hurricane or halt the march of time.
We are both central and peripheral.
In the grand symphony of the universe, yes. We are absolutely central to our own lived, conscious experience, but we are entirely peripheral to the mechanics of the stars.
Right.
Sikander's ultimate point is that seeing ourselves as giant ants is not an insult to human dignity. It is an invitation.
An invitation to what?
It is an invitation to wonder, to reverence, and to a much deeper, more authentic compassion for all the other forms of life that share this brief, luminous journey with us.
A brief, luminous journey. That is what that shared electric current of life gives us.
It is.
It is short, it is highly fragile, but while it is switched on, it is luminous.
Beautifully said.
Let's trace the arc of this incredible philosophical journey we've just taken, because it's been a lot.
It has been quite a ride.
We started by simply looking down at our kitchen floor, staring at a mere speck of animated dust. We examined how our unaccountable power over that ant turns us into capricious gods, dealing out weather-like destruction.
Right.
Yet, peeling back the layers, we found that the shared fundamental current of biological life makes us absolute equals.
On a cellular level, yes.
We then looked up and realized that nature's boot is hovering right over our own heads. Earthquakes, diseases, cosmic furies, they completely shatter our internal locus of control and our illusion of mastery.
They strip away the armor.
And from that state of physical vulnerability, we zoomed out even further to look at the geometry of perspective. We adopted the vantage point of the ancient mountains, the indifferent oceans, and the eternally burning stars.
We scaled way, way up.
We stood on the elevated bridge in Peshawar and watched humanity flow through the bazaar, recognizing our own urgent, deeply felt individual dramas as the rhythmic, predictable, frantic movements of a colossal anthill.
We forced ourselves to confront the reality that our physical and temporal scale in the universe is infinitesimally small.
But the crucial takeaway, the mechanism that prevents this from becoming a descent into nihilism, is that this smallness is our salvation.
It is the cure.
It is the exact condition required for the flower of humility to bloom in the exhausting desert of our ego. By embracing what the author calls imaginative humility, we can finally drop those heavy chains of arrogance.
We can put them down?
We can move through our daily lives with greater grace, a lot more kindness, and a hyper-awareness of the fragile, shared essence of all living things.
Which brings us to the author's final, direct call to action.
What does he ask us to do?
He offers a practical application for this entire philosophy. It's an invitation to alter how we move through our daily environment. He asks that the next time you see a tiny ant carrying its impossible burden across the pavement, you don't just walk past it.
And you certainly don't blindly wipe it away.
Right. He asks you to pause for just a moment. He suggests that if you look closely at its determined, rhythmic steps, you might just catch a reflection of your own soul.
Why?
You are both small. You are both remarkably, stubbornly persistent. And for this brief, flickering moment, you are both wonderfully alive against the immense, overwhelming backdrop of eternity.
Small, persistent, and wonderfully alive against eternity. It fundamentally changes the emotional weight of a walk down the sidewalk, doesn't it?
It really does. It changes everything.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, it kind of makes you wonder about the limits of our own perception.
In what way?
Well, Sikander powerfully illustrated how an individual ant, entirely focused on its crumb, is completely blind to the larger architecture of the house it is standing inside.
Right. Has no idea.
It has no concept of the forces framing its existence. And he showed how we humans, rushing through a crowded bazaar or surging in a stadium, are equally blind to the cosmic forces framing ours.
We are just as oblivious.
But if we truly are the giant ants of the cosmos, endlessly laying down our global fiber optic networks, building these massive, rhythmic, sprawling mega cities, and constantly communicating in these complex streams, could humanity collectively be forming a planetary supercolony?
Oh, that is a fascinating thought.
Is it possible that the human species as a whole is unwittingly building something, moving towards some vast collective purpose that we as individual hurried little workers simply lack the vantage point to perceive?
Like we are building a structure we can't even see.
Exactly. What grand architecture might we be building inside the quiet theater of existence without even knowing it?
No.
Just something to think about the next time you find yourself staring down at that tiny, merciless mirror scurrying across your kitchen floor.